It's great to see the activity, the energy, to be in person for these events. So thank you so much for being here tonight. And of course, after the program, we'll have dessert and more conversation and tours of the facility at the end. But I'm Mark Davis, Vice Chancellor for University Relations and President of the UC Santa Cruz Foundation. On behalf of my colleagues at the university and the foundation, welcome to this evening's program. We are pleased to welcome you to the campus to both honor those who help advance the work of this great university and also celebrate some of those advancements showcased by the extraordinary facilities that we're in today. I would like to acknowledge a few of the many special guests we have this evening. Will members of the UC Santa Cruz Foundation Board, current and past, please stand and be recognized? And will members of the Chancellor's Cabinet please stand and be recognized? We also have representatives from two very special partners of the institution who will speak later in the program. Representatives from the international architecture firm of Studio Gang, as well as representatives of the Kresge Foundation, whom you'll hear from later. I would like to begin tonight's program with our land acknowledgement. The land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Waswas-speaking Yupi tribe, the Amamutsan tribal band comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during the Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. Thank you. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the 11th Chancellor of UC Santa Cruz, Dr. Cynthia Larive.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming for this wonderful evening. I'm grateful for the opportunity to say thank you this evening to a group of donors who are extremely important to our campus. Our Chancellor's associates provide consistent support that's critical to our success as a world-class institution of higher learning. Year after year, your gifts help us bridge the gap between endowed scholarships and other sources of financial aid. Your commitments enable transformative change, and you also inspire others to give back. So thank you for what you do for our campus and for our students. Tonight is also an opportunity for us to shine a light on a truly special project here at UC Santa Cruz, one that we're so incredibly proud of. Kresge College renewal. Hopefully you had a chance to take one of the tours to get a sense of this remarkable project. We'll be talking more about it during the panel discussion. All of the thought and the care that went into the project, and importantly, what more is still to come. Just a few weeks ago, we celebrated the opening of our stunning new Rachel Carson Oaks College Dining Hall. It has a state-of-the-art kitchen and dining area that has sweeping views of the Monterey Bay. And the good news is we have even more projects in the works. The second and final phase of the Kresge project is already underway, and we expect it to be finished about 2 years from now. Phase 2 will include 600 beds on top of the 400 we just opened for the students. That's about 650 more students than were originally housed in the college. We expect to break ground this spring on a new family student housing complex and an early education center for the young children of students and employees. This project will be immediately followed by another housing project that will serve nearly 3,000 upper division undergraduate students and graduate students. And last month, we received additional good news. A new funding plan announced by the state will allow a housing project that we are pursuing in partnership with Kresge College to move forward. Wow. Our participation in this project helps support Kresge in building their first student housing project. And that project will include 250 beds for UC Santa Cruz students. But even more important than the beds is the many ways that this project will strengthen the transfer pathway between our institutions. All of these housing projects and others we're working on will greatly benefit our community. It's so exciting to see our hard work on new housing and academic space paying off. Big thanks to our divisions of Finance, Operation and Administration, and Student Affairs and Success. They're working cooperatively on many of these projects, and I hope you'll agree they're knocking it out of the park. Academically and research-wise, we're also on an incredibly strong trajectory. Our new Center for Coastal Climate Resilience is leveraging our internationally recognized work in marine science and coastal sustainability to develop innovative, nature-based strategies to strengthen coastal resilience in the face of a rapidly changing climate. Over 20 years ago, researchers in our Genomics Institute were the first to sequence humankind's genetic blueprint, and this year our scientists played a leading role in fully sequencing the Y chromosome. They also released the first draft of the Human Pangenome Reference. This is a reference genome that's comprised of the genetic sequences of 47 people, different individuals from different ancestral backgrounds. That's important because that boosts our collective understanding of human biology and genomic diversity. And two UC Santa Cruz researchers, David Deemer and Mark Akeson, were honored last month in a ceremony at the Library of Congress, receiving the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences Golden Goose Award. This is an award for scientists whose federally funded basic science or engineering work was deemed by some as being obscure or silly at the outset, but in the end creates deep societal impact. And that's certainly the case for nanopore sequencing. Equally impressive, we continue as a university to be committed to opportunity and access to higher education. I'm deeply proud of the opportunities we offer to the next generation of California leaders. Of the roughly 5,500 new Frosh and transfer students who joined us this fall, about 36% are first generation in their family to attend university, while 40% are Pell eligible, which means their families qualify as low income. We're so proud to be a vehicle for social mobility, providing better futures for our students through the education they receive at UC Santa Cruz. Well, I think that's the perfect way for me to segue to our next guest. William Moses is Managing Director for the Kresge Foundation's educational program, which supports post-secondary access and success for low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students. The Foundation's close alignment with our campus ethos is no coincidence. The Foundation gave Kresge College its name in 1971, and next year will mark 100 years working to expand opportunities for the underserved and underrepresented. It's my pleasure to have you with us here today, William.
Thank you, Chancellor LaRive. I want to thank Dr. LaRive for inviting the Kresge Foundation to participate in this wonderful event and this wonderful celebration of how far UC Santa Cruz has come and Kresge College has come over the past half century. This is not the first time I've actually been to UC Santa Cruz. I was actually born in San Jose. I brought my kids here about 10 or 12 years ago, and their father dragged them over the bridges and through the redwoods. So it's really wonderful to see how beautifully the architects have, managed to rejuvenate the older facilities and also add to it and enhance it. So it's just really wonderful to see. And just as the Kresge College has celebrated its 50th anniversary in the last couple of years, as we heard earlier, we're about to celebrate our centenary from 1924. And the person who helped found Kresge College and who helped found the Kresge Foundation and the Kresge Eye Institute and countless nonprofit organizations that are funded every year, was a man named Sebastian Kresge. He developed a chain of department stores in the late 19th century and early 20th century. They were called the Kresge department stores. They eventually became Kmart. And his goal was to create a foundation to really provide opportunity for humanity and to support the betterment of humanity. And so it's just really wonderful to be at a place that in many ways embodies that, not in many ways, it completely embodies that. And now we are no longer tied to the Kresge Corporation. In fact, we probably cut those ties about the time Kresge College was founded. But the Kresge Foundation continues to support and continues to operate and continues our shared benefactor's wish that his wealth should support the betterment of humanity. Now, our current work supports many of the same kinds of students that are supported and educated here at UC Santa Cruz. Overall, the foundation supports opportunity for low-income people in America's cities, but in the education team, we're looking at post-secondary access and success for low-income, first-generation, underrepresented students. We know that not only does UC Santa Cruz have wonderful profile in terms of Pell Grant eligibility and in terms of first-gen status. I heard earlier that Kresge College itself actually has slightly better standards, which is really wonderful to hear. And we really just want to congratulate and applaud Kresge College students, their reputation for creativity and independent spirit. We value their contributions to this campus, the Kresge College campus, and of course UC Santa Cruz, and to the state of California, where we have a special focus as well. And we really value their commitment to campus pride at a time when people on the far right are attacking people who are LGBTQ and are standing up for what's right and being true to the true nature of what an academic institution is, which is to look for truth and for generosity of spirit and to truly make the world a better place. So I do want to thank all of you, who many of you were at one point Santa Cruz students, Kresge College students, but also obviously the students who are being educated today. And we really are thrilled that we too are celebrating our shared commitment to serving humanity. One of the things I should add to that, in addition to having a common name and a common benefactor, one of my colleagues I learned 2 days ago is a UC Santa Cruz grad. I think she went to she went to College 7. Does that have a name now? Okay. But even more interesting, my boss is a man named Rip Rapson. He's the president of the Kresge Foundation. His father was Ralph Rapson, who was the designer of the UC Santa Cruz Theater Arts Center. I just found out 2 days ago. So, between real and metaphorical family ties that we have, the commitment that all of you are bringing to truth, creativity, and justice, and all of the great work you accomplish every day here at UC Santa Cruz and at Kresge College, we're just so pleased to be counted among your family and celebrate the rebirth of one of this country's premier higher education institutions. So thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I am so delighted to be here. I am Lori Kletzer. I'm the campus provost and executive vice chancellor. And I am the chief academic officer. So it just seems fitting that I get to talk about these teaching and learning spaces. This new academic center is just fantastic. It's spectacular. It brings Kresge College, just vaults it into the 21st century. It's re-energized, it's reimagined, and it's built on that foundation. Thank you, William. It retains that foundation of community engagement, of seeking truth, of being together socially and intellectually to collaborate. All of that is just bedrock here. And now we have these fabulous academic facilities in order to continue to educate our students. The Academic Center itself will house several programs: the history of art and visual culture. To the insiders, that's Havoc. the Science Communication Master's Program, Film and Digital Media, and the Writing Program. It also houses the Kresge College academic offices and some faculty office space. If you were here before it got dark and walked across the bridge, you know that there are an array of offices that now look into those redwoods. If people can't find me at some point in my Kerr Hall office, I just want to suggest where you might look, because what space to be in, to think deeply, to think together, to think collaboratively. There are multi-purpose classrooms here. There are study lounges, there's a computer lab, there's the room we're in. There is also a 600-person lecture hall for events and performances. And just over the last week, with a 600-person hall, the first-year class of Kresge College could come together for their first plenary meeting and all be in one room, which is an experience that is just a treasure. And I'm excited for all the events that will happen in there. These spaces for teaching and learning and gathering will strengthen, as I've said, Kresge's founding values. Those founding values exist without new facilities, but with new facilities, right, people can really come together comfortably with inspiration and continue to do the work of innovation, to continue experiential learning, and to continue to be engaged in the community. And that's so much a part of not only Kresge's, right, but all the college's living learning environments. As you saw at the reception, that's a residence hall out there. So we have residence halls and this beautiful academic center. And it establishes our commitment and reestablishes our commitment to that living learning environment and strengthening the student experience on campus, really to provide spaces to think together, and for intellectual and social collaboration. I look forward, and I fully suspect that this is going to become yet another favored place. I almost said the favored place, but that might be offensive to the other favored place on campus. But it'll become a favorite place for all community members to reflect, to pause, to recharge, and to come together. I feel a special connection to Kresge College. Many decades ago, more than 2 and less than 4 decades ago, the first class I taught was just steps away from where I am right now. I taught to about 140 people, Econ 1 at Kresge, and so it has always just been a special place for me. So it's now a really special place to see what it now looks like in the 21st century. And I have already heard from some colleagues that these are becoming the favored places, and it's been, less than 2 weeks. These are becoming the favored places for teaching and for learning. So I look forward over the next set of years of spending time with many and all of you, whether that's here in our beautiful spots at Kresge or anywhere else, for that matter, on campus. And just thank you for your support and for being with us here tonight to celebrate. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lori. I'd now like to invite the panelists to join me on this stage. So you're in for a treat. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to be in conversation with my colleagues and our special guest from Studio Gang to share more about the inspiration that guides the Kresge College renewal and how we think about living and learning spaces today. Joining me this evening is Mayanthe Fernando, who has been the provost of Kresge College since July 2022. As provost, Mayanthe oversees academic programs, including the core course component of the academic literacy curriculum and experiential learning courses. She is an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology and served as interim provost of College 9 and John R. Lewis College, which was then College 10, in the 2020-2021 academic year. What a year that was.
It was certainly a hell of a year.
At the end of the row is architect Jolie Kearns. She's the campus director of physical and environmental planning. Jolie began her time at UC Santa Cruz in 2014. She was first a senior architect, and prior to joining our campus, Jolie was the owner and principal of her own firm and also worked as an associate for Toshiko Mori Architect and other firms both in New York and San Francisco. And in the middle, we have architect Steve Wiesenthal, who leads the San Francisco studio of the architecture and urban design practice Studio Gang. This is founded by Jeannie Gang, and Steve has gained national recognition as a connector of people and places, insight, and architecture, which so resonates with the spirit of our campus. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. So the first question I have is for you, Mayanthi. We just concluded our first full week of instruction, and I wondered what you've heard from students and staff about the Academic Center and residence halls.
Thank you for that question, and thank you everyone for being here. Well, these are two photographs that were taken today in the seminar rooms right in this building. These are two sections of the Kresge Core course. And as you can see, the students are very excited to be here. They love the classroom spaces. It's been a really extraordinary week. And there's 4 students here who I asked to be here. So if you're interested in hearing from them, 2 of them are first years who live in the dorms, and 2 of them are second year students. But students are really excited to be here. And the other thing that's been really lovely is having students in the communal spaces. So I run into students all the time in the Kresge academic offices who are just there in our lounge to kind of study and hang out and find a quiet space. When I'm walking around, I see students in these little nooks, sometimes together, sometimes alone. The space is being used exactly as it was designed. And so that's really lovely to see as well. The lounges and the residence halls are being used. When we had our opening celebration, yes, the students came in, they grabbed their food, and then they went and hung out in the lounges. And again, the space is being used as it was designed. The other thing I'm hearing is from faculty, and as UBC Kletzer said, faculty are really excited to be here, and that includes myself as well. It's just really beautiful classroom spaces to be used. And then I think departments are really excited to have their offices here. We'll do a tour afterwards, and you can see some of the office spaces. But it's just a really, really extraordinary building, and the design is fantastic. I have an office that looks out over the North Bridge and the ravine. Lori, you can't have it. So it's just been a really fantastic week, and people are very, very, very excited to be here, to be using this space academically, to be living in the residence halls as students. And so thank you to Jolie and Stephen for making this happen.
So Steve, most architecture projects, building projects I've been familiar with at college campuses, they include stakeholder involvement as a matter of course. But Kresge College has a legacy of participatory democracy, and the founding provost taught a course in which students envisioned the future of Kresge, and those conversations informed the physical and academic development of the college. So how did that legacy affect community engagement, and what did you hear from students and faculty and staff and alumni and others?
It was so refreshing to be told that we could meet with students formally and informally and engage as much as we could to really learn about the legacy. And I just want to say how incredibly honored Jeannie and I and the rest of our team have been to be able to work on this amazing campus. Here's a photo of one of we set up a model on the main walkway. You can see the model at the lower part of the photo, and those pins, which the students nicknamed this Kresge Voodoo, those are the redwood trees intended to be, but they were not shy. I mean, they shared what they were seeking, what they loved about the place, and we had monthly town halls. In fact, I was feeling the reception out there felt like one of our town halls, but without the pizza. So it was still fun, though. And then, yeah, it was, architects, we want to know that what we're designing is for people, is to connect them, is to enhance community. And I couldn't ask for a better client in that regard to be able to engage as much as Jolie and the rest of the team facilitated with us.
Yeah, I'll add that from the campus side, it was just a huge responsibility to start this project. I think we started thinking about how we could both design the new architecture, but also design a process that honored the original design. So that process of participatory democracy, how students were involved, and then really start to open it up to them, be transparent, and understand both the good and the bad. These buildings were at the end of their material life. They had been, standing for 50 years, and the students told us a whole collection of what was working and what was not. And so we knew that we both had to honor that legacy of participatory democracy and then, bring it into today to meet the problems and needs of the students. And we were very kind of open-eyed and wide-eyed about that. So I think that trajectory really defined the project.
Yeah, and if I could add that the engagement included some of the design colleagues from the original firm of the original Kresge College, who we met with, and we were so gratified to be told, bring your voice, don't just replicate what's there, but let's create the next generation of the campus.
Right, and if I could just add to that too, I think what we're hearing is the relationship here between past, present, and future, right? And a kind of looping of past, present, and future. And I think the term renewal actually is a really important one. It's the Kresge renewal. It's not just a renovation. It's not a departure. Right. It's a reminder of the past in the present and into the future. And I think that's actually more than just an architectural ethic. I think it also goes to the way that we at the university understand our relationship to the past, present, and future. And our student body, as you noted, is very different from what it was when the university and when Kresge was founded. 33 to 35% of our students at Kresge are first generation in the incoming Frosh class. 44% of them grew up in households where English was either not the first language, or it was bilingual household or multilingual household. And so I think this ethic of a relationship between past, present, and future is a really important message for our students, for those students for whom the university has not always been a welcoming place, who come, and so this sort of architectural ethic, I think, reflects a broader ethic of UC Santa Cruz and of Kresge, where students can come, but they don't have to forget their history, they don't have to forget their roots, they don't have to forget their family, they don't have to forget where they came from, right? It's something that they carry with them, their histories, their families, their traditions. It's something that they carry with them into the present and into the future. And so for me, the idea of renewal is more than just a building aesthetic. It's more than just an architectural ethic. It's actually how we live and think at this university and at Kresge. And so I really appreciate that attitude, both with the buildings, but also more generally with the university.
Yeah, so Steve, Jolie alluded to the classic architecture. Kresge was designed by the postmodern architects Charles Moore and William Turnbull Jr. That might have, to me, would have been a little intimidating, probably. I wondered what your strategy was to introduce the new buildings into the iconic space.
Well, we took cues from the original very much. In fact, I studied Kresge College as an architecture student. What did you say? More than 2 decades ago, but less than 4. Similar. Gotcha. And it was a revelation to think about a campus design that wasn't just about a main, the lawn at UVA or quads, the traditional, but as inspired by a Mediterranean hill town on a ridge with ravines and incredible place. And I studied it as an abstract idea as a student. And when I set foot on this campus for the first time, I was blown away because the drawings I had seen were about the street and buildings framing the street. And I didn't really fully grasp the surrounding natural environment. So one of our, I'd say, fundamental approaches was to support the street, and it will be, rebuilt, and then layer onto that by building the new residential buildings in the periphery and the new academic building at the apex of the street, where the center of gravity is, not just for Kresge College, but also the rest of the campus to connect across the Ravine Bridge. And I think we have a next image of the model, which was just so much fun to work on, I got to say, because we were looking for, you mentioned the spaces, there's the kind of formal program spaces. We refer to it as, net assignable space. This is the square footage of the conference room, or the lecture hall, rather. But then there's the spaces in between, and that's where the life comes out. And so I think this model was a demonstration. That's about 20 foot long, by the way, a demonstration of finding those spaces inside and out. And then I think the next image, back up one, thank you. We did these, we looked very closely at the original architecture, again, primarily about framing the street. And if the original residential buildings were these orthogonal buildings, rectilinear buildings with a mix of public and private, like an old, a medieval town, we then said, well, how would we layer onto that and think differently about the relationship with the natural environment to make connections that way? So by introducing the slight radius, it meant we could save a whole lot more trees. It meant we could frame views out into the forest. And then you'll notice, if you haven't already seen, the social spaces are at grade, and the sleeping rooms, the residential rooms, and the lounges at the end are at the upper floors. So that means that the public walkway connecting that original L-shaped street now is an fully accessible loop with all the social spaces, the cafe, the lounge, and so on, at the ground level.
And we, I'll just add, we translated a lot of the sort of the scale of the communities in the original into the new buildings. So, about 30 beds per building became one floor in the R News, in the new residential. So even those sort of programmatic moves that underpinned the architecture really helped keep just kind of a complement to what had been there before.
Yeah, and I think if the next image is the plans and the rendering. So I think you get a feel for the lifting the residential floors, and those are clad in wood, so that as you're looking at them next to the trees, and the trees are always taller. The trees will always be, that's one of the, I think, most special aspects of this campus, right, is that no matter what architecture you do, the trees are what you see and experience. And I think that there's another then series of diagrams about the building we're in now, which was to learn, again, to look back at Charles Moore and his colleagues, and to, in particular, the library building, how that sits at the edge of the ravine, so that at the street, it's only a couple stories high. But actually, I think it's like 1.5 story. Yeah, but then it's the mass of it steps down. So we did something similar here for this building. So in the end, it's the same height, very similar height to the original street buildings and how they'll be rebuilt. Excuse me. And then we actually looked at the polypore fungus that were growing at the base of the redwood trees. So the hen of the woods fungus has these lobes. And Jeannie did this beautiful sketch of the fungus that inspired, in some ways, the lobes of this building that reach out and give you your views and light.
Right, that's
into
amazing.
The ravine.
So, Jolie, and one of our challenges with this project was to help connect Kresge to the campus core, because so much of the campus is beyond Kresge. It's kind of at the edge. That's part of the beauty. We have the ravine and the redwoods. And so how did the programs and the physical layout of the space let us do that?
Yeah, we started this process with just some early kind of stakeholder engagement and visioning, and really tried to think through what does Kresge want to be? Is it a destination? Is it a link? And of course, it's a little bit of all of that. And I think its position here on the west side is facilitating so much more connectivity beyond the college. The idea of siting this academic center up at the north meant that students could now cross over an accessible bridge and reach Science Hill and the campus core very, very easily. And all of the circulation improvements, I mean, Kresge has about a 50-foot slope difference from south to north. It had never truly been renovated beyond a few bits here and there because you couldn't unless you were renovating all 21 buildings. They each had an entrance at a slightly different elevation. And so this idea of a pedestrian street, which connected everything and was so powerful, also proved to be physically challenging to really kind of think through. And I think you all, many of you probably walked across the bridge coming in. That bridge was raised from the last third to make up 20-foot difference. So this 8-acre site now will be completely accessible. Phase 2 will continue that so that you can now walk from Porter up through Kresge over to Science Hill, the campus core, with an accessible pathway, which is so very important for our campus.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the elevation drop. We also have these amazing clusters of trees. And Steve, you talked about how the mushrooms became the design for this. How did you incorporate the campus's culture and character into the design?
You mean in addition to designing a building like a mushroom?
Yes.
Okay. Well, has anybody seen, it's called fritting, which we put on glass so that birds won't,
Yes.
so they'll
I've
see it.
seen that.
Has anybody seen the fritting on the residential buildings yet? And if not, hopefully you will. It's these 12 species that we found, that there are many more, right? But 12 species that are graphically represented. We call them critter frits on the windows of Kresge. So that's one element of the culture and kind of making that visceral connection using mass timber. I mean, we're sitting here with wood columns and beams, and the beams curvature is somewhat reminiscent, I think, of the branches right out the window in the forest, and trying to find those kind of emotional connections with the natural site is very much one aspect of that happened to perform very well from a carbon footprint and
Yes.
environmental sustainability perspective as well.
I'll mention a couple other, things that you can't see in the building. All of the plumbing is dual plumbed. We call it purple pipe. Right where the party was outside, there is a humongous cistern, and we are collecting all of the stormwater and rainwater that comes off. It gets filtered and then put back into the toilets and irrigation on the site. Any kind of residential, res halls and apartments have a lot of toilet use. So that's one way we're able to use non-potable water instead of potable water to offset that. So I think some of the ways that we have responded to the environment are also just kind of looking ahead to the next 50 years. They are highly insulated, these buildings. They are all electric. There is no carbon here. We have a lot of heat pumps in the basement. So a lot of those kind of decisions also were especially important, I think, with these buildings. And one other thing that I think is important to mention is looking at all of these buildings and seeing the architecture. That is what, of course, stands out, but it's always on our campus looking at what is still here. So looking at all of the kind of redwood groves that are still remaining and that same topography that is still remaining. And you can see where the environment has asserted itself into the architecture, where the bridge kind of kinks. If you walked over, it kinks because there was a beautiful fairy ring of redwoods that was so emblematic of Kresge, and we didn't want to lose that.
Well, can I tell a story about the cost estimator and the redwood? So, okay. Is it okay if I tell that story? So we have our site plans. We get them out to the cost estimator. And we had marked on this fairy ring of redwood trees, woodpecker rookery. And he calls me up and he said, how do I price a woodpecker rookery? Thinking he was going to have to build it new. No, we were protecting it. We were preserving that.
And of course, it's priceless, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and in fact, so the on the facades of each of the 3 new residential buildings, opposite where the lounges are. If you go,
I don't think
you had it there. Nope.
Sorry.
There you go.
Oh, there.
See the circles? Those are louvers So, but those are our nod to the woodpecker rookery in the forest. So I'm hopeful that the maintenance folks won't find acorns in them. But we'll see.
Well, we're here tonight to celebrate these beautiful new buildings, and we're so grateful for them. But we're also hard at work at the next phase. I wonder what the programmatic and architectural goals are for phase 2.
Sure, I can take that one. This is the first phase of a much larger project. We've built around the periphery so that we could then move students who are living in the existing buildings over to the new res halls and then really kind of tackle those. So we have a combination of renovation and reconstruction of those original buildings. One thing we were particularly happy about is those original residential buildings had a double height space. And so we were able to squeeze in a third floor and generally keep that envelope the same and respect the kind of historic aspects of it, but also bring in a few more beds. So the town hall that was replaced here by this academic building is now centered at the south end of campus, surrounded by students. And we have a lot of just flex spaces. This was alluded to before, but flex spaces for students, even the circulation space here, these types of spaces, I think, in a living, learning environment are so important, and something we heard from so many students, you know, how can I continue the conversation with my professor outside of the classroom? Or where are these spaces, I think especially after the pandemic, where are the types of spaces where learning is extended, living is extended beyond beds and classrooms?
And I can say something about the programmatic
Yes,
goals.
thank
Yeah, of course. Well, so maybe, can you go to the next slide, Julie?
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things that's happening is the renovation of what used to be called the Writing Center. Some of you may be familiar with it, that kind of angular, strange angular building. That is going to become what we're going to call the Kresge Collabs, the collaborative laboratory spaces where students can come together from different disciplines, different majors, come together with faculty to tackle real-world problems and find solutions to problems that they would identify. They would choose what they wanted to work on campus and in town. They would bring in, community partners. They would bring in experts from outside, and these would be spaces where students and faculty would really collaborate together to formulate a kind of experiential learning model that I think is more and more important for education, and is something that we really value here at UC Santa Cruz. Yes. So that's the intention for the what used to be the Writing Center, now will be the Kresge Collabs. We are doing a lot of co-curricular programming, so we are bringing back Writer's House, which is a themed floor, and we're building a whole set of co-curricular programs around that. We'll bring in poets and writers and artists. They will do private kind of workshops with our students in the lounge spaces in the residential halls, and then do public events at the town hall, which will be rebuilt, as Jolie said, on the southern part of Kresge. And so, I'm really excited about the programs that these new buildings are going to enable. I think that they really truly allow me as a provost to put together a curriculum that really is about living and learning together. And so again, there's a strange little bug here, but I just really appreciate the opportunity to do this. I think it really goes to the spirit of Santa Cruz, where we really, I think as a university, have really come to value experiential learning and active learning, to allow our students to direct their own education with the help of faculty and experts around them. So that's the programmatic goal.
Well, and when Google knows everything, the power of education is using knowledge to solve problems.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have one more question for the panel, but then after that, we'll have time for maybe 2 questions from the audience. So this question's for each of you. There are so many interesting, delightful elements in these buildings. If you had to pick one space or one highlight for the project that's your favorite, which one would it be? Well, Jolie, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. when you work on a project, I have worked on this project for 8 years. And so I had thought I knew every single space. I was thinking how it would look. We've looked over drawings. But I think those moments sometimes when it gets built and there's something that surprises you is really phenomenal. And I think the two things that surprised me were, one, the new res halls are quite simple buildings. They're repetitive buildings, but the way that Studio Gang sited them is such a dynamic walk on the new pedestrian accessible trail. And we'll look at that on the tour. But every time I walk that, I see something new or see the landscape framed in a new way. And that's one of my favorite moments. The other one that surprised me is we typically don't see the bay when we're in the forest. We see the bay when we're at that ecotone, in the woodlands, in the oaks, but on campus, there's a few places you do, but because the buildings are what they are on the south lounge of one of the res halls, I remember when it was under construction, I looked out and it just blew me away that you could see Monterey Bay from this deep in the forest. So those are probably two of my favorite spots.
Yeah.
Steve, you want to go next?
I have two children. You're going to ask which one's my favorite.
I'll give you two.
I actually can answer it with one, I think, because it occurs in multiple places in both the academic center and in the residential buildings, and it's the visibility of the forest from within.
It is spectacularly beautiful.
And I definitely have a favorite, and it's the critter Fritz, the window Fritz, who I hope all of you will get a chance to see them. But I really love the way that it enables us to get a sense of the other non-human creatures amongst whom we're living here. And I think it's just a really wonderful way to honor the other species around us. There's also some connectivity there. The person, Alex Jones, who's the manager of the Campus Natural Reserve, I think, advised you on exactly which critters are around. And he teaches a course for Kresge called the Natural History Practicum, which is a hugely popular class at Kresge. And so there's sort of a connection there. And then the course text that we're using this year for Kresge is called Undrowned. Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, which is an amazing book, but also a really nice way in which we're thinking about the ways in which humans and non-humans are always in relation and what we can learn from animals. And I will end my plug. This was I came with a prop, which I will show you. But those window Fritz are now the logo for Kresge College. And if anyone would like a T-shirt, I have some in my office. I have plenty. So if you would like a T-shirt, please let me know.
That's fabulous. All right, so we